Welcome to Origin, Remember Your Truth, a podcast for everyone who senses there's more than meets the eye. I'm your host, Anne Hochwald, and I'm really excited that you're here for a special episode today. Together we explore what lies beneath conditioning, roles, and learned identities through perception, energy, intuition, and lived experience. This is your invitation to remember your inner truth and original frequency. Everything here is for you to feel what's true for you. Take whatever resonates and throw out the rest. On today's episode, I have a very special guest, Nasim Badaghi. She recently submitted her PhD and is a mindfulness teacher. So welcome, Nasim. And I'll let you introduce yourself now.
Yeah, thanks, Anne, very much for inviting me to your podcast. It's great to be here, actually. So like you say, I'm Nasim. I just submitted my PhD manuscript, the dissertation. It just got approved, and I've been doing research on online mindfulness-based cognitive therapy for people with cancer for the past what is it now? 4 years, more or less. Like you said as well, I'm a mindfulness teacher, so I also give mindfulness courses to mostly PhD students and postdocs at Radboud University Medical Center in Nijmegen. I would say that is basically what I've been doing these past years. A bit more about myself. I am a clinical psychologist by training. That was my bachelor undergraduate degree. And then I further pursue a research master on cognitive and clinical neuroscience with a specialization in fundamental neuroscience, which was basically the biology of the brain. So really something, I would say, a little bit far from clinical work. But now I'm back to clinical work. So thanks, Anne. Thanks for the invitation once more.
Thank you and for coming. It sounds super interesting. So your PhD exactly? Because since I've known you, I know you've been working on it. I think we've known each other for about 4 years now.
I think so, yeah.
So what exactly were you doing in that PhD? You
Right.
mentioned it already, but it was a lot of information.
Yeah. Oh my God. Yeah, I can talk about my PhD for a long time, but I'll try to make it clear in few sentences. So I think that the easiest way to put this is that I've been doing this research on mindfulness-based cognitive therapy, which is a type of mindfulness-based intervention. Perhaps we can discuss a bit more mindfulness and what it entails later on.
Sounds good.
But it basically we evaluated two different formats of mindfulness-based cognitive therapy for people with cancer. So we tested a group blended version and an individual unguided and see if they would affect different outcomes. So for instance, psychological distress, quality of life, self-compassion, mindfulness skills. And we were interested in looking at, okay, do these interventions have an effect or not, and how good they are for these people? So we also evaluated the long-term effects. So meaning when people finish the course, for how long these benefits last. We evaluated long-term effects up to 9 months post-treatment. Then before running the big trial, we also did a feasibility study in which before, let's say, testing the intervention with a big sample, so with a lot of people involved, we did a smaller study in which we see if it was feasible or not, if it was good or not, if people would participate or not, basically. And then part of my dissertation also involved doing a meta-analysis, which in science is potentially the highest quality of evidence. So it is when you put together a lot of studies and see,
Yeah.
okay, are these studies telling what are they telling, let's say? And what we aim to evaluate was, okay, are mindfulness based interventions also effective in improving positive health outcomes among people with cancer? Because of course we know, perhaps, okay, we know, let's say we as the scientific community involved in mindfulness research, that mindfulness has shown to be effective in reducing symptoms among people with cancer, but not necessarily on improving positive health outcomes. And when I say positive health outcomes, I'm talking about these things that are not necessarily symptom related. So symptom related can be reducing stress, decreasing anxiety, fatigue, pain, so all the things that we may put on the negative side of the spectrum, right?
Mhm.
And increasing the positive health outcomes is, let's say, the other side. So things that are more related to flourishing. So, for instance, increases in self compassion, well being, spirituality, finding meaning, these type of things. And yeah, we conducted that meta-analysis, and then we saw that the cumulative evidence also shows that mindfulness-based interventions seem to be effective on these outcomes for people with cancer. Um, so yeah, in short, not that short, I hope this was clear enough. Perhaps we can unpack the details a bit later, but that's what I've been doing for the past years besides teaching mindfulness to other people.
This is very interesting for me now because I've been always wondering, but never really asked you, what exactly do you do? So now I have a lot better overview of what you have been doing these past couple of years.
Uh-huh.
And maybe we just go, before we go more into detail about your research, but for someone who's new to the topic of mindfulness, to go more into that, what exactly is mindfulness? Because I've started reading the book you got me from
Huh.
John Kabat-Zinn, the Wherever You Go, There You Are. Already the title, it's a good title. And yeah, mindfulness is actually, it comes from Buddhism, as I've understood, and one of the people who brought it more to the Western world was John Kabat-Zinn. But yeah, what exactly is mindfulness? Because if you just hear the word, or if I hear the word, and I know that's not what it means, but I hear mind is full, which is probably more of the opposite, or, well, not the opposite, but I mean, your mind can be full and you can be mindful about it, right? But
Completely.
yeah, when I was reading what mindfulness is, I thought, am I even that mindful? Because I also meditate, but do I do that in a mindful way? And then maybe what is the difference between mindfulness and meditation? I'd love to hear your take on that.
Sure. So, okay, I think that we should perhaps acknowledge that mindfulness comes indeed, like you said, from Buddhism and Hinduism as well, some practices where originally actually mindfulness comes from the Pali word sati, which does not exactly translate as mindfulness, but more as remembering.
Oh.
Um, and in the Western world, mindfulness is, let's say, generally understood in our society as this attention, as this attention that arises when we pay closely attention without judgment. And this is the definition, not exactly those words, but this is the definition that Jon Kabat-Zinn introduced. Like you mentioned, he was the person who brought mindfulness to the Western world. Um, and I think I would like also to say that mindfulness, it can be understood as different things. So one thing can be mindfulness, the trait of being mindful, right? So
Mhm.
how much attention or this awareness, the ability, like the ability of being of placing the attention in certain place or on doing certain thing mindfully. Um, yeah, that's, let's say, the trait. It can also be the practice, right? So the practice of mindfulness meditation, so sitting down and meditating or doing different formal and informal exercises. Um, so, like I said, it can be the trait, the practice, but it can also be the state of being mindful. So, how mindful I am regarding, yeah, different things and the skill that can be further developed, which is basically what we measure on research. So, this skill that can be further developed by the practice of mindfulness. I don't know if that gives a little bit of an overview of it or if that is clear enough.
For me, that was a very nice overview. So
Right.
in practice, it could be like mindful cooking. That's as an example. You can
Yeah.
cook in a mindful way,
Yeah.
or
And
you can
mhm.
actually have, yeah, when you're meditating, that would be, you called it the state then. And you
Right.
have this whatever kind of meditation you're doing then. And the last part, maybe you can go into that. Was that more mindful towards the future, or how would you
No, I would say more like, so
say
it's like
that?
the state. What you mentioned is the state or the trait of being mindful, and then the
Okay.
skill that can be further developed. So let's say one is like mindful how yeah, how mindful a person is, but it is also a skill that it can be developed, right? So it can be trained. So it is like
Ah,
also a
okay.
capacity, so to say. And this is, like I mentioned before, what we measure in questionnaires. So we ask people how much, not in these exact words, but we ask people if they're judging their thoughts, if they are more aware on their daily life, daily lives, how much they take the time to observe their surroundings, because yeah, mindfulness entail many different things, like I mentioned, and actually in literature as well, um sometimes the word is used interchangeably, if that's the right word as well, so people say mindfulness, but you actually do not know to what exactly is being mentioned. So I think that's potentially a source of confusion for a lot of people as well. And I think as well that nowadays, what you say, mindful cooking, which was a great example actually, because this is what has been sold a little bit to the world nowadays, like, oh, this mindfulness thing about self care and taking the time to be a bit more mindful or relaxation, which in the end, it is really not that. Um, and I said before that mindfulness comes from these Buddhist traditions. And it is important to note, actually, that in these traditions, mindfulness was really never aiming to reduce symptoms or to alleviate pain or suffering. That was a byproduct, let's put it that way. But mindfulness was more in in these cultures as a mean of cultivating awareness, liberation, wisdom. And then, of course, if because of that you would experience less pain and less suffering, yeah, that's great. But that was not the goal in which we in the Western world put it, right? And I think that may be something that happened because of the way it was introduced in our societies. So, Jon Kabat-Zinn, indeed, he was the pioneer and the person who brought mindfulness to our societies with this mindfulness-based stress reduction course, which it is. Yeah, it is great, I have to say. There's a lot of evidence showing that it has really good effects. And it was originally developed for people who had pain, who suffer from chronic pain, to help them navigate these difficulties. And of course, it showed to help them reduce the stress that they were experiencing. And yeah, so that's also where the name comes from. So stress reduction, right? And then a couple of years later, the mindfulness-based cognitive therapy came out, which then included some components of cognitive therapy. Then it became also very popular. And yeah, later on nowadays we have mindfulness for everything and for many different populations as well.
Yeah, it's super interesting, and I really agree with you on this with the, you could almost say, commercialization of
Mm,
mindfulness. Um, Maybe you could, for the listener, explain in a short way what you said MBSR, so the method from John Kabat-Zinn is,
mm.
and also the mindfulness-based cognitive therapy, or then difference between that and regular cognitive therapy to someone who doesn't know what cognitive therapy is.
Yeah, sure. So a mindfulness-based stress reduction program entail an 8-week course in which people go to a group session led by a mindfulness teacher. Each session lasts approximately 2 to 2 hours and a half. And during those sessions, people learn different mindfulness practices or meditation practices, let's put it that way. So people learn body scans, mindful body movements, sitting meditation. But there are also a lot of informal practices. That's how we call them. So it is this, for instance, is about daily life things. So eating a bit more mindfully, paying more attention to how we're eating or to how we are, basically navigating life in different realms of our life. So that would be the protocolized, so to say, MBSR. It also includes homework, or I should not say homework, but home practice. I
It's the
think that,
connotation you have to
yeah,
to
yeah.
homework.
Yeah, I think it's better to put it home practice. Yeah, because then people are advised to do different practices throughout the rest of the week, because you see the teacher and you see the group once a week for 2 hours, but that's potentially not enough to really capture what mindfulness can do to your life or how you
Yeah,
experience mindfulness on a daily basis.
and then the
And
training
then
of this skill as well, basically
Mhm,
what you said.
mhm. Completely. It takes time, right? And then the mindfulness-based cognitive therapy is very, very similar to the mindfulness-based stress reduction, but it has a bit more of cognitive therapy. So it has more exercises that focus on paying a bit more attention to the cognitive parts or things that are okay, one step back. So the mindfulness-based cognitive therapy was developed for people with to avoid, how do I say it, to help people who had depression to not experience depression again. Does that make sense?
Yes.
Yeah, okay. Yeah, and yeah, it has some components, like I mentioned, of mindfulness-based cognitive therapy, in which people learn as well how their repetitive negative thinking, for instance, is affecting their daily life, and how that may feed into, again, feelings of depression or
Okay.
loneliness, and then how people can identify those thoughts way before they leave them down the rabbit hole. Let's put it that way.
Okay.
Does that
So,
make sense? And then, of
yes, a
course,
method of prevention
yeah,
to
completely.
prevent the fall back, if you
Mm-hmm.
want.
Yeah, right. And yeah, after that, there have been many different versions or adaptations of the main MBSR. So, for instance, there's also the MBCR, which is mindfulness for cancer. Um, and
But
yeah,
that's what you did then, because
so in my
in your
PhD,
research.
what we actually did was the mindfulness-based cognitive therapy, so the MBCT, and then adapted certain components to target specific needs of people with cancer. So, for instance, grief and pain. Um, we also included different psychoeducation components for people who have cancer. So it just changes a little bit, because in the MBSR course or in a mindfulness course, people would also discuss just different things about their life, how they're reacting to, their routines, the automatic pilot, that thoughts are not facts, these type of things. But we tailor it a little bit better to the specific needs, like I said, for people with cancer.
Regarding the automatic pilot, what is that?
Yeah.
And the
So
thing you mentioned just after.
what did I mention after?
You mentioned the automatic pilot and
Oh, that thoughts are not facts.
okay, yeah, that. So
Right.
if you can go deeper into
Yeah.
that.
Yeah, I would love to. So these are two different topics that we discuss in an MBSR course. So the first one is the automatic pilot. And the automatic pilot is basically this, how do I say it? Like this thing that we just are not necessarily aware of, right? So how our minds are very, how do I say it? Our minds love to save energy and to do things so we are efficient and we don't have to consume too much energy and to be productive. So we have certain ways of doing things in the same way over and over again. So for instance, you may notice that you take the same route to your home all the time. Sometimes you are not even aware of why you take it. You just do it,
Yeah.
right?
How did I get home?
Exactly. I think that's a very good
Did I
example of
close
the
the door?
automatic
Did I lock
pilot.
the door?
Exactly, right? It's like you just do it. You don't think about it. Um, so that is the automatic pilot. And I would say the automatic pilot as well is this thing that is responsible to some extent for how we respond or react, perhaps is a better word, to things that trigger us. So if you have a fight with someone or if you feel sad, so our minds have this also pattern or this ability of going to back to the same things over and over again. So it if we are not aware of that, like we keep repeating those thoughts of, oh yeah, I'm not good enough, no one loves me, and the brain somehow does this by itself. And again, this is what we may call the automatic pilot. And one of the things in mindfulness trainings is that we try to recognize this automatic pilot and how we very often just go through life with this without really paying attention. Um, but something that I would also like to mention is that this automatic pilot is not necessarily bad, right? Like in the end, it makes a lot of things efficient and it saves from deciding every single
Yeah,
mini choice that we have to make. So it's
we
actually
don't
good.
want
It's
that.
not bad. Yeah, otherwise we'll be really thinking carefully about everything. And yeah, it's
A
not
lot of
necessarily,
choices to
yeah,
make
it's
every
not the
day.
best. Indeed. But um yeah, but we also don't want to just be living a life completely ruled by this automatic pilot, right? So that is one thing, for instance, that we discussed in the mindfulness courses. So with meditation and with sitting practices, people sit down and we start observing. When we start observing the breath in the meditation, for instance, you sit down, we guide people through a sitting meditation, and we start recognizing little by little how our mind often tends to go to specific similar places, right? Or the stories that we tend to repeat ourselves, how similar they are. Or you may also, when you sit down and you see that, oh, my mind is getting distracted, I'm not going back to the breath. Sometimes we also observe that there are certain patterns that we like to choose as our distractions. So, for instance, in my case, just to give an example, if I get distracted during a meditation, it is very often that I am thinking about future plans or I'm planning, organizing, scheduling what I have to do after. My mind goes there automatically. And I notice, of course, with practice, I have noticed that my mind likes to go there when it is not focused on the breath, right? What the mind likes to do, my mind at least, it loves to plan and organize and control. That's what my mind likes to do. And some other people may experience a lot of daydreaming or thinking about the past or, yeah, dwelling on what they said to other people. And yeah, part of the mindfulness practice is sitting down, see what we're thinking about, and recognizing these things. And of course, one of the components as well is this, like I mentioned at the beginning, non-judgment. So trying to observe these thoughts and whatever is going on, just with this capacity of, oh yeah, this is something that is coming. These thoughts are just, yeah, okay, these are thoughts, and very related to the other thing that I said, thoughts are not facts. So the mind is just thinking, I'm observing the thought. That doesn't mean that is the ultimate truth, right? It just
Whatever
keeps
that is.
going. Yeah, and another thing is that, of course, we think a lot, and then these thoughts keep coming, and then, okay, we may see, okay, this thought is not real. But I think it is also very important to become aware as well that we do not necessarily choose those thoughts, right? It's not like, sometimes, of course, we may be able to go, I don't know, and explore our childhoods, our background. Like, we go through, yeah, psychotherapy, and then try to see why we had those thoughts. But in a mindfulness course, which is, by the way, not psychotherapy, we just see that these thoughts are arriving, that they're appearing, and that we don't necessarily choose. I mean, it's not like people want to choose a thought telling you feel bad, or you're worthless, or you did a
You're
bad
not good
job,
enough.
or
Yeah.
you're not good enough, or no one loves you. Like, I don't think we, generally speaking, want to have those thoughts, right?
No. No.
Yeah. So,
So, so during the intervention, I'll call it intervention.
right. Yeah,
Also,
intervention is a
did
good
did you
word.
conduct it, or did you kind of supervise it? As in, were you also working with the patients
Right.
and
So,
giving these lessons? Because there's now a difference between your regular mindfulness courses that you give and these kind of, yeah, with the cognitive therapy. Would that be then more in the psychological way that you are also working with them?
and so a little
Because
bit more. Yeah.
when you
Yeah.
observe your, okay, those are my thought patterns, but then if it's going into this intervention, yeah, what do you do with that then? I mean, the awareness is great that you're, for example, you watch yourself planning, but then what do we do with that? Or is that already enough?
Well, I think this will very much depend on the person. So we, as a mindfulness teacher, also, by the way, in the MBCT, or in the MBSR, the trainer is never a psychotherapist, or the mindfulness teacher is not a psychotherapist going in depth about potential problems or issues that the person may have, but it's just bringing more into awareness all these things. And if something very painful or deep arises, then potentially the mindfulness teacher will refer the person to a, yeah, psychotherapist, or to a more specialized support.
Mhm.
But this is, of course, yeah, it will very much depend on the person, right? I don't think that there is a one size fits all. I don't know if that is answering your question. I sort of forgot the exact question.
I cannot tell you the exact wording of my question either, but to me, it's more clear now in what terms this intervention was different from regular mindfulness courses, and also whether or not it entailed actual, yes, sessions with a psychologist. But you said now that that would be an additional thing if it comes up basically with the patients. Did that come up a lot, that through this mindfulness practice during the your research, that a lot of those patients then saw a psychologist as well?
Actually, that is a very good question. And actually, not too many people. So I did not work with this population myself. So we had, of course, because I was the researcher as well, right? So I was not working with the people with cancer. We had other or researchers, other trainers working with them in the sessions. Um, so I would have to double check that to be 100% sure, but from the back of my memory, no, like it didn't happen too often. And something that I do have to mention as well is that um many of the people were also in this unguided format, where there was actually no mindfulness teacher and no group. So people would follow the 8-week program via an app, and it was self-guided. So they did it everything by themselves. So it would be, and we also did not ask after, like, did you use other type of, I don't know, psychotherapy, or were you also seeing a psychologist? Perhaps we should have done. That's a very good point, actually. But no, we did not. So I could not tell that.
Well, you
Uh,
could do that as a follow-up study.
yeah, indeed. It would be a
If
bit
you run
hard,
out
but
of research topics, then
yeah, definitely. And then from the people that I have been working with, no. Some of the people, I have to say though, that have a bit more of struggles, to put it that way, some of them, they are also already seeing a psychologist or a personal coach or trainer or something, and then they come to the mindfulness course as a side thing, or as something that, yeah, sometimes the coach recommended, or yeah.
this mindfulness course or app, you said it was done via an app, so online and actually not in person.
Mm-hmm.
Um, did the patients sign up for it, or were they asked on a random basis, do you want to participate in this study, or how did you even, I'll say, find the patients?
Yeah, so how did we find indeed like all the people with cancer that we included
Yeah.
in our study? And what we did, so we did different things. We put flyers, so we placed flyers on the hospital. We send also this information to different contact people that could further expand our information. So like um, patient organizations, GPs as well, so general practitioners. We send them also flyers from our study. We also published a newspaper article in the Netherlands, and where I did the study actually. So people also could saw it on the newspaper. We had um, a web page, and actually some of the people that came to us was because they just searched mindfulness cancer help something and find our online page and the study. It was free, so anyone could join. And yeah, then some people joined. That's how we
How many
got.
people did you work with?
So in the end, we ended up with 186 people in the randomized control trial. So it is
That
quite some
sounds
people.
like a lot.
Yeah, yeah, but actually the goal was 254, but we didn't reach our
50, okay.
intended sample.
Interesting
Yeah.
number.
Yeah, usually studies need to have, particularly our study that was a 3-arm randomized control trial, meaning that people were randomized to 3 different conditions. So like I said before, they were randomized to the group blended, to the individual unguided, or to care as usual. Because in the study, you
What do
want.
those different groups mean?
Right. So you want to be able to compare. So how do you know that mindfulness even work, right? So you need
Uh-huh.
something to compare. And that something is the care as usual. So people that are not doing a mindfulness course or any
Okay.
sort of mindfulness. Um, so that's why we need a bigger sample. So we are able, in statistical terms, yeah, you need like you need to do a power calculation to know the number of participants that you need. So the results that you get are significant
Yeah.
in terms of the number of people that you have, and then if these results can be generalized to the rest of the population. So that's why we originally needed, like I said, 254, but because of recruitment issues, we didn't actually manage to get that number, but 186. And we had to finish the study at some point because of different things like resources. And anyways, we were recruiting for almost 3 years, and we anyways didn't get more people anymore, so we had to close the study as well. At some point you need to say, okay, we cannot keep recruiting people for 10 years
Yes.
until we reach the sample size. Right. And then you also asked me which were the 3 intervention arms. One was the group blended. So I mentioned before that the MBCT course lasts 8 weeks. in the group blended, 4 of the sessions, so sessions 1, 3, 5, and 8 were guided with the mindfulness teacher in a group. They did it via Zoom though, so it was online. And the other 4 sessions, they did it by themselves. So they would follow the material of those sessions individually at their own time. Of course, before the week that they had the group session. The individual and guided was all self-paced, so people would follow all the course individually, just by themselves. And the care as usual didn't have any intervention. However, for ethical reasons, we did re-randomize these people later on. So when they completed the care as usual period, we then further randomized these same people to the group blended or to the individual and guided condition. So they would also have the opportunity to receive the mindfulness course.
Okay, yeah.
If that makes
That
sense.
that makes sense, because otherwise, yeah, they signed up for the study hoping it might help them, and then they didn't get it.
Yeah, yeah,
That's what you mean.
yeah,
Yeah.
completely,
So it
completely. And of
was
course,
whilst they were being
Mhm.
treated for cancer, this whole intervention, or when was it? Was it after?
So sorry, ask your
Like,
question
when
again.
exactly was this intervention placed during their course of the cancer disease?
Yeah, so these would be different for each person. So our inclusion criteria, so we included people basically that had cancer or that had cancer before. So they could also be cancer survivors. And then we were really including any person. So they could be following palliative treatment, meaning that they were having end of life care, or they could have been going under curative treatment intent. It really did not matter. So we included any type of cancer patient in that sense because we wanted to make the study as real as possible, let's say. So to just offer it to anyone, any person who had cancer. Yeah. So it really did not matter.
Did you also develop this program, or who developed the program or the app that you were using? Was
Do
that
you
also
mean
part, like the specific intervention, this MBCT?
so the
Is it
content of the
the con?
intervention?
Yeah, was that specified, or is this MBCT really a general, yeah, if you can say general therapy tool?
Yeah, so the MBCT, like I mentioned before, perhaps I was not clear enough. The MBCT like I said, originally developed for um relapse prevention of depression, and the exact content of that we also use for our own intervention. So we use
Okay.
that one because that is also the one that has been evaluated and tested for different people, different population across different settings, not worlds, countries. um yeah, and that is potentially one of the interventions that have, yeah, well, let's say it has a lot of evidence, so we know that it works, and that's why we use that one and adapt it a little bit for um, people with cancer. And if people are interested actually in looking at what exactly it is that we included, like I can share our studies are published already, so they are
That's
also
great.
open
We
source,
can
so anyone can read them, look at them. So I
We'll put it
perhaps can
all in
just
the
share
show
with you that
notes.
later.
Yeah,
Yeah, and then people can just click and see exactly what we did. Sure.
that's great. That's really good. So, what exactly, for someone then who doesn't go into the research but wants to know now, what did you find in a summarized way?
Right. So, well, we find different things. I would say one of the main findings was that, of course, well, not of course for me, because I was very enthusiastic about the research, but we did find that both versions were effective in reducing psychological distress. However, it is interesting to note that the group blended was effective in reducing psychological distress at post-treatment. So immediately when people finished the course, they reported lower anxiety and depression levels, among other outcomes. But this was our main outcome, so the most important measure. And the individual and guided also reported, the people from the individual and guided also reported reduced psychological distress levels, but not immediately after the intervention, but 3 months follow-up. So immediately after the intervention, we did not find significant results for this group, but we did find that 3 months after follow-up. And in the longer term follow-up, so up to 9 months, we also actually found that the benefits were sustained for both intervention conditions up to 9 months follow-up. And there, the effects were also evident on other outcomes. So people also reported reduced rumination, reduced fear of cancer recurrence.
Rumination, what is that? To
Oh,
everyone
yeah,
who doesn't know.
rumination. So this ability that we have of repeating ourselves things in our heads. So thinking about, yeah, the same thing over and over and over again in an endless loop. So for people with cancer, it may be, just as an example, of course, this will vary depending on each person, but for instance, it can be, oh, I am going to feel pain when I have this chemo again, or when is my chemo going to be? When am I going to have the results? And then you just keep thinking about this all the time, nonstop. So we did find that rumination was significantly reduced for people with cancer as well. We also found increases in self-compassion, in mindfulness skills, in decentering. Decentering is this ability of see our thoughts or our experiences for what they are, separated from our emotions. So like looking at the clouds of our emotions or our thoughts rather than getting lost in them. Let's put it that way. So we also found that those are some of the findings we saw. Then an interesting finding as well is that we were interested also in somehow understanding, okay, we know that there are these effects of reducing psychological distress, but what exactly is happening? Like why are people experiencing these benefits? So we evaluated different potential reasons, let's put it that in very simple terms. In research, we call mediators, so things that will explain the effect of the intervention on the outcome. In our case, the intervention was mindfulness, the outcome was psychological distress, and then what it is in between these two things that is making the effects happen. And we saw that actually reduction in rumination and increases in self-compassion for the group blended mediated the effects on psychological distress. And for the individual unguided, we found only that rumination mediated the effects on psychological distress. Yeah, those are the results that we got. But I would have to say that for this type of to draw a strong conclusion on this would be a bit wrong. These are, I would say,
Scientific terms,
yeah, in
at
scientific
least.
terms, because of course the study was not powered for that, but these are more exploratory research. So I just don't want to state this as the ultimate truth, right? But just as exploratory things. And in addition to that, we also did some research on moderators, which is, in simple words, translated to who is benefiting from what. So are, let's say, women benefiting more from the mindfulness course than men, or younger people, or older people, or people who were in curative treatment versus people who were in palliative treatment. And interestingly, well, we didn't find any moderators. That's simple. So
So
actually,
everyone benefited the same.
which actually, yeah, in that sense, again, these are exploratory results, but in simple terms, then it
Of course.
means that it seems that mindfulness, or at least the courses that we offer, the two intervention conditions, were helping everyone, regardless of, yeah, age, sex, gender, I don't know, type of
That's great.
treatment.
If it
Yeah,
is
so in
that
that
way.
sense, right. So in that realm, it's good, I would say.
Yeah,
Again, I mentioned these are exploratory results, but it's
of course.
interesting to see these things happening. And another thing that we also found was that we also checked for moderators of dropout. So we wanted to see, okay, actually, who are the people who decide to stop participating at some point, or who stop the intervention? And we found yeah, we found that people in the individual unguided condition drop out more from the from the intervention that people on the group blended, but we could not actually pinpoint why is it that people are dropping out more. The only thing that we saw is that for people in the group blended condition, people who had higher psychological distress at the beginning of the training, so even before they started the training, so just the baseline of psychological distress, the
How do
ones
you
who were
measure
in,
that?
sorry,
By the way, how do you measure that?
questionnaires. So we give people
Okay.
questionnaires, they answer the questions, and yeah, we
Then you get
compare.
a result, and that's
Right.
okay. Psychological distress, 8 out of 10 as a baseline, then from all the
Exactly.
Okay,
Exactly.
got it.
So what was I saying? Right. So we found that for people in the group blended condition who had higher levels of psychological distress at baseline were more likely to drop out than those who had lower levels of psychological distress at baseline. But we didn't find that this was a moderator for people in the individual unguided condition. So what we think that may be happening here is that potentially the group may have been too triggering or too stressful for people who had too high levels of psychological distress. Potentially they may have benefited more from individual guidance, or from not having a group session, for instance. Yeah, but again, this is something I think we requires further investigation. Yeah.
So with the individual blended, everyone was doing the things completely on their own, or they actually had single sessions, just for me to get this straight now?
Yeah,
Because for the
no,
group
people,
blended, you had the every second session, I think, with the group, and then in between you did things with your app. But for the individual blended, you did it in which way?
the individual unguided. So for the
Unguided. Okay.
yeah, for the
Okay.
individual unguided, people would follow completely by themselves session 1 to
Okay.
8. And they had only, well, not only, they had that little avatar that they could choose in the app that was their mindfulness teacher guiding them through the 8-week course, but there was not real person or not peer support, not a group. But like I said before, interestingly, actually, this group seemed to, psychological distress was just not a moderator for this group for dropout.
Either
Yeah,
they did it or they didn't.
exactly.
Yeah. That's super interesting. One more thing about the rumination. So the rumination, because I think that's something a lot of people, most people can relate to.
Mm.
Um, is that the same as the autopilot? Or is that part of the autopilot? Or what is it?
That's a very good question. So I would say that it is indeed part of the autopilot. So, but it is this autopilot non-stopping, right? So it is the autopilot just running crazy inside our heads. I think that's how I would put it in simple words. So just this repetitive negative thinking, yeah, that just basically appears by itself and that we just conditioned to have because who knows why, but
Survival,
yeah,
I'd say.
very likely.
I mean, in the end, it wants to protect us. It might not be serving necessarily in everyday life than the way it's functioning, but I guess usually we're wired for survival.
Right.
And regarding then the old thought patterns, I'm not enough, that was from some wound. Okay, we try to protect ourselves there, follow that, and then that's the, yeah, so rumination is supposed to help us survive.
Yeah,
But it can make
definitely.
life hard.
Yeah.
um, Regarding mindfulness, and I mean, it kind of, when you're more mindful, well, the narrative part of the brain, I'd say, becomes more quiet, right? But what exactly is there then? Like, what's left?
So
That
what?
narrative is
Mhm.
gone. What is active then
Yeah,
in
that
the
is a
brain?
very
And not
interesting.
necessarily the structure, but though if you can tell me that, that's also cool. But like, what is happening then?
Yeah, well, I have to say that in scientific terms, we actually don't know exactly what it is happening, like with the brain and the changes that we see inside when people are practicing mindfulness or more mindful practitioners or um, long-term practitioners, let's say. And we are trying indeed, we as researchers, the scientific community. I don't do research on this, by the way. Um, but yeah, trying to see what exactly is happening inside the brain when people are meditating. And what it looks like is that we have this default mode network, which are these structures of the brain in which we that are related to self-thinking, or these are the brain structures that become active when we are not doing anything in particular, so when we are not goal oriented. And it seems that mindfulness is affecting this yeah, the way we process. I don't know how to put it clearly, but it seems that mindfulness training, well, there is evidence showing that it may downregulate the activity of the default mode network, but more recently, I've seen research going towards restructuring, so just changing the way the default mode network is active. And if we translate this, I would say in simple words, it is that when we are, yeah, just not thinking about or we're not doing something in particular, then the brain sort of, or the mind learns to not go back again to this negative thinking, but to something else, right? That's how I understand it as well in simple terms. But all the nitty picky and all the small details, I would not be able to tell really.
I think we don't need more details, though, on the self thinking. What do you mean by that? And what would something be where you're like a real life example where you're not goal oriented?
So, for instance, when you're not really doing much, you're just sitting in the couch, for instance, I don't know, and then you're thinking, oh, what am I gonna do now? Just like when the mind is not engaged, like right now, the mind is engaged. We are talking to each other.
Hmm.
Answering to your questions. I'm thinking, my head is processing all this. So I am not focused on myself at the moment. But let's say I finish this interview and I just go sit in the couch. Oh, okay, I relax. That moment when I am not really doing something in particularly, that's sort of this mind wandering, when the mind just, and actually sometimes the mind just likes to wander very often, because we're, I don't know, we're reading and then the mind starts, ooh, like thinking about everything but except what you're reading. Um so that is that. I think better say mind wandering is a better way of putting it.
Okay, now the self thinking makes
More
more
sense.
sense
Yeah.
because, yeah, I mean, now I'm not thinking. my mind isn't wandering right now, though now that I'm
Exactly.
saying it, it could wander because I'm thinking of wandering. But apart from that, I wasn't focused on myself, but really on this, what we're doing right now.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but that's also the mind wandering a skill in itself, because I think a lot of people have unlearned to do that, or in their full schedules, they hardly have any time to do that. Because just sitting down on the couch and thinking, what could I be doing next? They're probably already planning the next, or the next thing has already started again. And then when they're in bed and they're thinking of tomorrow's plans or things they have to do there, that would also that wouldn't be self-thinking, right? Because they're already in the next thing. And if they're not aware of it,
Yeah, I'm not entirely sure though. Like what would scientifically, let's say correctly, what would be the right thing in that sense? I would say that it is to some extent mind wandering because that's the automatic way in which the mind starts. So the mind is not doing something in particular with an objective, but it starts wandering, and then the wonder is the planning. You know what I mean?
okay,
So that's how I would personally understand it, but I would need to, yeah, I don't know if there is, what's the discussion or what's the word, the agreement on
conscience,
this.
yeah.
Yeah, I have actually not quite think it like that in that way. Yeah, like when you're organizing and planning, like if that's necessarily, I would say that's also a type of mind wandering, right?
Yeah, because I'm thinking now, is that good or bad? Because if you're already immersed in tomorrow's meeting or something and you're in bed and you should be sleeping, is that, yeah, your mind is probably wandering, but is this wandering good or bad?
Yeah, I think that's a good point though to raise as well because
Because you also mentioned relaxation, and then maybe when you're on the couch relaxing and you're just wandering, okay, but if it's keeping you from sleep, then that kind of wandering might not be so ideal.
yeah, yeah. And I guess that in this, yeah, it would definitely not be ideal when you want to sleep and the mind starts thinking a lot. And I guess that in this sense, like what mindfulness could help with is, okay, let's just see what the mind is doing, right?
Mhm.
Um, and try not to have this judgment or, oh no, why am I thinking now? I should be sleeping, and then going to see the watch. It's like, oh no, it's 12, oh no, it's 12:30, oh no, now it's 1. And then what
4 hours
mindfulness.
to go.
Exactly, exactly. And I would say what then mindfulness would help with to some extent is to, okay, the mind doesn't want to sleep, okay, like, let's just see what it is doing, and then perhaps just observing what the mind is doing. And I guess maybe some people will eventually get tired and fall asleep from just looking what the mind is doing. Um,
What
yeah,
exactly do you do there in your lessons, the mindfulness lessons or courses that you give? Do you learn something there as well that could help you in this type of situation? Like for everyone listening right now, whose
right.
minds wander in the evening when they want to sleep and then they're thinking of
Yeah,
everything they could be doing tomorrow that could go wrong.
yeah, yeah.
What can they do?
Um,
What is an
well,
easy practice maybe they could do, or if it's not easy, what could they be looking into?
yeah, well, I would say, well, this is not necessarily mindfulness by definition, let's put it that way. But yeah, I would also, it has some mindfulness components, but people could do this yoga nidra or non deep sleep rest, which they can find online as well on YouTube. There is a lot of yoga nidra and yeah, non-sleep deep rest
I
protocols
think
where people can just listen to that, and it's sort of a way in which it helps the body relax and the mind relax as well by listening to these um guided sort of meditations. I don't know how to better describe it. So that could be a way that could help. I find as well that many people in the mindfulness course, although this is not the intention of a body scan, but many people use the body scan to fall asleep because it actually helps them relax. Yeah, like they just start paying attention to the different parts of the body and eventually they fall asleep. And
yeah.
yeah,
So it's
in,
similar to yoga nidra, right? I did that
Yeah,
once, and I thought it was rather similar to a body scan.
yeah, yeah.
Just for the non-sleep deep rest, very short for everyone listening, what is that exactly?
It's the same as
Could you
yoga nidra.
Okay,
So it's this guided meditation, if I can put it that way. Um, yeah, that helps relax the body to some extent. And I
okay.
think that is also where mindfulness has got, how do I say it, where the confusion between mindfulness and this, for instance, yoga nidra meditation lies. Because mindfulness is really more towards the paying attention, like this more awakeness,
More outside
awareness.
meta
Yeah.
perspective, maybe?
Yeah, completely. Yeah. And in these yoga nidra meditations, people would just like let the mind go. And
Yeah,
that's why the body relaxes.
yeah.
So
Yeah, that
yeah, I would actually say, I don't know if you actually want to be very, very mindful when you cannot sleep, right?
yeah, that's why I was wondering, and it makes a lot of sense, though, the way you put it, and regarding, yeah, the wandering or just the mindfulness, practices and this being very aware. So in practical terms, then once you're aware and you're not judging it, this is probably already my mind thinking, okay, what can we do now? What do we do with that? But that's not the mindful part because it's like you just are. But yeah, what
Mhm.
do you do with that then when you have that awareness?
But
You have
what
it,
do you mean?
as in you're aware you're of what your mind is doing, where it's going. You're not judging the potentially ruminating thoughts, and then that's it. That would
Right.
probably be the mindful thing to do, right?
I
Because
mean,
this is
yeah.
where I'm realizing, ooh, I'm not that mindful. Because then I think, okay, and now I
I
see
mean,
myself from the outside. What do I do now? But yeah,
yeah, when you're doing, of course, the mindfulness meditation, you usually have this guidance. So you would be potentially paying attention to the breath or to the anchor or to specific part of the body. And when
the
you
anchor,
become, yeah, so you could, so there are some practices in which people may not necessarily use the breath as the point of attention, but I don't know, people may feel it more or better in their hands or their belly or, and they may choose that as the focus of attention. And then when you're sitting and doing the meditation, you may be sitting and bringing your attention all the time back to that anchor, which may be, yeah, any place that the person may choose. So in a mindfulness meditation, in a formal sitting meditation, we would guide people through different components, let's put it that way. So one would be the breath, then the emotions, then the thoughts, the sounds. And that would be like a practice of, I don't know, 40 minutes, half an hour, depending on, yeah, the guide, the person who's guiding. And then what I am saying with this bringing back the mind is bringing back to those different components that are being the point or the focus of attention for that particular meditation. So with your question, when you're saying, okay, I'm becoming aware of my thoughts, what now? Actually, the what now is bringing back the attention to the breath or bringing back the attention to the body or bringing back the attention to, yeah, any particular place that is the focus of attention for that session.
all right. Um, so there are always longer meditations than these mindfulness practices that you teach, or are there also shorter? I don't want to say interventions, but yeah, what kind of things can you do to
Yeah,
practice
so
this?
there are many different practices. There are the sitting meditations which can last from 10 to, I don't know, an hour or 5 minutes. It depends how the teacher does it, right? And you can find online, oh my God, like so many different things and varieties of meditations. But there's also the very popular 3-minute breathing space in which people um yeah, gather the attention to the breath for a moment, and then with this narrowed attention again, bring the attention back to the whatever is going on in the in that moment. So we start like expand with an open awareness, noticing what you're thinking about, feeling, then gathering to the breath, and then opening again the attention towards something, yeah, to this more open awareness. And this 3-minute breathing space is, yeah, it's a pause, I would say. Like the name suggests, 3-minute breathing space is just a space that people can use to
Yeah.
pause for a moment.
Anytime.
Yeah,
You always have 3 minutes.
yeah, yeah.
So the focus between what you're thinking, what you're feeling in your body, your mind is it always both, or do you try to focus on the different parts? Like, to observe, I mean,
Hmm.
when you're observing the different parts, because you also have your anchor. It's a lot, seems like a lot to
Oh yeah, no,
notice at the same time.
yeah, no, definitely. You don't do it everything at the same time, and you always have the teacher who's guiding you. So the teacher would potentially start guiding you to paying attention to the breath, and that would be for, I don't know, 10 minutes, 15 minutes. Then you may move to the body, um and then you may move to the emotions or the thoughts. So it's not that you're paying attention to everything at the same time, but it's a bit more structured in that way. Of course, we have also this open awareness, which it is a little bit more, it can be a little bit more difficult for some people, because there's not like a particular thing that you have to pay attention to, but it is just trying to keep your attention open, in that sense, to just see where the attention goes, right? Or what is calling the attention. Yeah.
Yeah, regarding the attention, I guess there are a lot of things that can call you, and to be aware of all of them. I mean, maybe if you're fully enlightened, then you can be aware of all of them at the same time, whatever fully enlightened is. And how did you even, this is a very different question, but how did
Mhm.
you get into mindfulness?
That
I
is a
mean,
very good
you're
question.
dedicating at least this part of your career to it. So how did you end up there?
Yeah. Oh my God, this is a very good question. I got I feel that mindfulness called me, if I can put it that way. Because it is, I mean, how do I say this? I didn't necessarily search for it. So I was not searching for mindfulness practices, but actually this PhD position um that I did, no, I mean, like the position that I have been doing for the past years, it was started by someone else who left the project. And then, yeah, they started for a bit. I don't remember exactly how long they were in the project, but then it was just not for them. So this position was open. I was searching for a PhD. I was interested in meditation, Vipassana meditation, actually. Never quite doing it too much myself.
What is
Um,
that? Vipassana meditation?
yeah, so Vipassana meditation is another form of meditation. Also, yeah, in which, again, you're training the mind to pay attention to the breath, to the body. So very, very similar, I would say, to what we do in mindfulness. I was just not aware of mindfulness as we know it now in the Western world, like everything that I explained before. So I was just a bit interested, really just curious about Buddhism, Hinduism. I was born in a multicultural family. So my dad is Muslim, my mom is Catholic. I grew up Catholic, like that was the religion that was most practiced when I was younger. But I think I was always very curious about, like these spiritual practices in more broadly, let's put it that way. And then, yeah, eventually I got interested also in Buddhism and this different spiritual practice than the ones that I was used to, which were more about this male god or Allah, or like
Hmm.
And then coming back a bit more to the question, yeah, I got interested, yeah, in this is different spiritual practice. And then my supervisor, no, at the time she was my boss. So I was working as a work group teacher, and she knew I was interested in this Vipassana meditation, in these things. And then she told me, "Hey, Nasim, like, and you know that you're also interested in research. This position is available now. Like, wouldn't you be interested in, wouldn't this be for you?" Like, so it really just, it knocked my door. Like, I didn't apply for it. I didn't go and search for that one in particular. It's so how I got into it, it's really, that's why I said it's not
It
that I
found you.
really got into it, it got into me. Like, it knocked my door. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, that's usually how the good things find us when we're not searching for them.
Completely, completely. It yeah, it
Life
found
just
me.
presents its opportunities.
Yeah,
You
yeah,
let it.
yeah. It's crazy though. If I think about that, yeah, it just came to be the way. Yeah, when I was not really searching for it.
Yeah. Yeah, and then afterwards somehow it makes sense. Like
Yeah,
life just makes sense backwards.
yeah. And now I am a very devoted mindfulness teacher, and yeah, I very much see the benefits that it has on different people.
So you practice it yourself as well?
Yeah, yeah, I do. I
Or
do.
meditate, or yeah,
Yeah,
what then is the difference between meditation, mindfulness?
yeah. So I think that it's like the line is really blurry. I couldn't say that there is like a specific difference between. I think I could distinguish it better in saying that meditation, it's that practice when you really sit down, or I don't know, lay down or stand up and do a formal practice, right? But I think that mindfulness can be translated to every single activity that we do, right? So if you're really immersed in that thing that you're doing, and I would like to add as well that mindfulness in that sense is not only about the attention. So I think that just saying that mindfulness is only the attention is a little bit narrow, because it also involves other qualities, like I mentioned before with the research, like self-compassion and no judgment. I think that also, it's like, if I look at that, like they coexist together. It's like they are together. It's not that one is alive without the other. I am deviating a little bit, I think, but
No.
that's how I would more or less put it. And I think that, yeah, mindfulness is also something that we would like to practice not only for ourselves, right? So it is, again, I think this is because it has been used and purposely, I mean, not purposely, but it has been used in a good way for stress reduction and alleviating symptoms and all this. I think it has been great that it has been helping a lot of people in that sense. But at the same time, I think that we should not forget that by practicing mindfulness, we're also serving a bigger community. So it is not only that, okay, I'm going to practice mindfulness for me to relax. So I am relaxed. So I am better. So I pay more attention. So I am more goal oriented. So I can be more efficient. No, it's more like, okay, let's practice mindfulness so I can become more aware of who am I? What am I doing? How am I serving and affecting this world also in a negative way, right? Like, so what things I'm doing that may be negatively affecting other people, or um the world, the community in a bigger sense. So hopefully it is something that can also help just the world in a better way. So to just give like a small example, I don't know, like if you just don't really separate your recycling, which I very often tend to forget, or just throw the compost in the normal trash, right? Just these small things that we notice, oh yeah, actually we could put a bit of mindfulness there, right? Or also when you're communicating with other people, how much attention you're giving to that other person while the other person is speaking. Or if you are already like, yeah, thinking about everything. The other person is just there in front of you and you're completely lost in your thoughts. So I would say, yeah, mindfulness, it is helping for stress reduction, alleviation, all this in a personal way. But I would aim that, yeah, like I would again come back to what I said at the beginning of our conversation, that it is more about this self transcendence and wisdom and awakening, really where its roots lie. So I think that we should really not forget about that as well, of using, if using is the right way to say, but of practicing mindfulness so we are just better human beings in this world.
It was really beautiful what you just said, like being more compassionate with others, not
Mm,
just with ourselves also. And I mean, when you're more mindful like that, it's also more of a, I'd say, collective awareness that you have then. Um, yeah, mindfulness really changes our awareness. It's not just the
mm,
process of being
mhm.
aware, but it really changes the awareness of also who we think we are or who we are, and then change that. So I'm just processing that right now. It's fascinating what mindfulness can do and what potential it holds
Right, right.
if you just also let it be and not
Mm,
make it, you have to do that mindfulness course or this is the
mm.
thing now to check off your list, but just not as a like a separate practice, but actually just living it, fully living it and embodying it.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, and it is indeed a pity. I would say that nowadays, like I mentioned as well before, we are very much using it as this thing to relax and, yeah, just be better or more focused. Or, I think we should not really forget that it's not about me, 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 me. It's really more about, okay, let's do this. So me can be we, right? In a good way.
I'm thinking right now because through mindfulness and a mindfulness meditation, for example, when you're in this, yeah, meta perspective, if you can call it that, and just watching your mind, for example, would you say that over time does the mind get more quiet, or is it just practicing this state also of looking at what it's doing?
I think that's a very good question, and I don't think I can answer for everyone, but for myself. I think the mind does get more quiet. Yeah, completely. Like you start not thinking so much about yourself and your worries and your problems, but you start just being more.
So it does it change your perception then basically when you are more, I mean, or does it just quiet one part down?
I think
I'm
it's
thinking
both.
what else could I'm just thinking of other like possibilities, like when the mind is more quiet and you are more in the now, if other things maybe expand the perception.
Yeah,
I don't know where
definitely.
science is there, if there it's investigating that or anything.
Definitely. Yeah, definitely. Of course. Also this awareness, right? So it is, you're not so much in yourself or thinking so much, but you are there. I don't know how to say it in a better way. You are with whatever is present in that moment and you're fully living that moment with whatever is going on. So you're not lost in the thoughts, in the rumination, in the what's happening next or after, but really present in that moment, feeling the body, and then hopefully that will allow to respond in a better way, or in a way that it is driven by a, how do I say it, by a more, just driven with more wisdom, so you respond in a more, in a wiser way. Yeah,
A more, well, also then collective way, you mean? Looking more from the outside, or
yeah,
what
yeah,
do you mean
potentially,
by wiser?
potentially. Yeah, so you also, yeah, you
Apart
respond in a
from
way in
looking at
which,
past, I'll call it mistakes.
yeah, I think so. But it is also very hard, right? Like right now we're talking about all these things as if, yeah. But I do have to say as well
I
and
know, you're the
acknowledge now that,
scientist.
Yeah, this is hard. Like, it is very simple, but it is hard. Like, it is simple in terms of, okay, mindfulness, awareness, attention, there's not rocket science in those words, let's say. And there may be things that these are to some extent things that we already know. It's not that I am saying anything that you may think like, oh, this is really quantum physics, right? To some extent, I think people may be able to say like, oh yeah, right. Like if I pay a bit more attention to the other person while the other person is speaking, maybe nicer, rather than just thinking a lot. Um, yeah, but it is quite complicated. Yeah, and it's very difficult, I think, or at least I can speak from me and from the experience of the participants that I have guided. It is not that easy to just live mindfully and be a bit more mindful, not in the society that we live nowadays, where we are directed towards productivity and efficiency and doing and numbers and goals, like when are you mindful?
In that small mindfulness slot that you have at the end of the
Right,
week, in which you
right,
have to be also efficient, of course, in then being
exactly.
aware of everything you did. Otherwise, oh,
Yeah, yeah. And I heard, I think I heard this, it was young Kabat-Zinn who also said, yeah, like actually now doing mindfulness meditation may be an act of rebellion when the whole world is telling you do, and you say, no, I'm gonna rebel. No, he didn't say it like this is how I
yeah.
understood it, by the way. Like, no, I'm going to stop now everything and sit down and meditate, like I'm rebelling against the world. And like, this is what stayed with me. It's like, yeah, it can be like this is small act of rebellion, right? In which you say, no, I stop, sit down and meditate and do nothing for the next hour.
We should probably all do that every
Yeah,
now and then.
yeah,
It would be
yeah.
funny if the whole world did that. Wonder what
Yeah,
would
right?
happen then. Yeah. So during your time now with mindfulness, what has changed for you, for you personally, not just from what you learned through the research, but through your own practice, or what kind of changes did you see in the students you taught?
Yeah. So, oh my God, like this is a very, there are many things that I can say, but if I can summarize a little bit, I think that for me, it has made me softer, so more compassionate, I would say as well, just to myself and to others. So just noticing how hard I can be sometimes. And then just lowering the edges, like making the square a little bit more of a circle.
Yeah,
I think that's
that's a
a
beautiful analogy.
yeah, yeah, I think that's a way of putting it. Then yeah, like I said before, not being so much thinking about myself and worrying so much about me and what I need all the time, but really using this as something to be a better person for the world. And in people, yeah, it really depends also, I would say, on the person, but I would say two things. One is just the energy when I see when these people arrive the first time in their in the mindfulness course, and you just see their eyes and their heads. I don't see their heads, right? But you sense how much thoughts are going there and how much anxiety, and people enter the room and it's like coming from a rush, the meeting, and like, woo, like people are on this really high energy. And every time they're coming in, and it's like they get a little bit softer, a little bit quieter. And I would say by the end of the 8-week course, to some extent, I don't know, it's like people have changed. I don't know how to explain it. Some people, of course, they mention as well, I have also become more aware. Now I don't react so bad to my partner, or I am a little bit more compassionate, or I pay more attention to what I'm doing, or I eat more mindfully, or I allow myself to enjoy more things. And to feel also the good and the bad for what it is, right? To feel more the negative things, let's put it that way. I don't know if saying negative, I don't want to say negative, but to feel the sadness, the pain, the anger, just feel it for what it is. But also the joy, right? When you feel the sadness and the pain, then also you feel better, the joy. and the happiness and the contentment, and people report these, they share these things.
Being more
um
present in
yeah,
that way than with
yeah,
whatever is at that moment,
yeah, yeah,
whether it
that.
hurts or
And
not.
yeah, and something else that I do say in the mindfulness course, and I think people understand, and that's also what I see in people, is that mindfulness can help people just very subtly change very small things, but the impact that that can have is huge. So to put it, if like, I don't know, if you put, yeah, if you put the coordinates in your phone of Google Maps going somewhere, if you change one number, you're going to end up somewhere completely different. And what
Yep.
you did is just like a micro change, like it's nothing, like you, I don't know, you deleted a one or a zero, but the change is huge in the end. And I like to tell people that as well, that mindfulness sometimes is this just tiny miserable thing that it actually seems that is doing nothing, but it is quite actually doing a lot. Yeah.
Kind of like this is the butterfly effect. I mean, that's a bit
I don't know.
with that one, just the flap of a butterfly could cause a tsunami. I mean, that's maybe a
Oh,
bit of an
yeah,
extreme,
yeah, a little bit, I guess. I didn't know
but
about that one, but yeah, it could be a bit.
yeah. Yeah, I mean, changing one small thing can have a huge impact. Following Google Maps, put in Australia or Austria.
Right. Right.
Almost the same, but not at all.
Yeah.
But these transformations that you mentioned, I mean, they are transformations. It's amazing, really, to hear that, how the awareness can change, how people really change then
Yeah.
through that. And
For some people, I do also want to mention though that for people experiencing, for instance, a lot of pain or traumatic events, mindfulness may not be the best thing at that moment. It may also, I don't know, trigger a lot of
mhm,
feelings that people are not yet ready to feel, or bring traumatic experiences or events that people were not necessarily quite ready to do so. So I would say, I don't want, again, like to sell mindfulness as this magic pill, right? Like, just to be very clear, I think it has great benefits. But again, I think it's a personal choice. Like, people need to be willing.
yes, that I think for everything, every kind of, let's call it intervention, be it
Yeah.
working with a coach or whatever personal topics you're working on,
Yeah.
if it's not from an intrinsic motivation, then I think usually it's not the best idea, because you should be willing to do that for yourself, through yourself. And to pick up again with people, for example, that have experienced trauma or something, you said you wouldn't necessarily advertise it for them. And of course, mindfulness in general, not as the magic pill, because I
Hmm.
also think there is no magic pill, let's call it that, for anything or anyone, because everyone is different and their experiences are different. But um, for someone interested now in mindfulness, like, who would you say would be more likely to benefit from it than others? Or are these, for example, people that
Yeah.
experience trauma, the ones that
I think,
maybe during the more tough or the tougher phases should not necessarily implement that?
yeah, well, I would say, again, coming back to what I said at the beginning, I think it's a personal choice. Because for some people who may be going through really difficult things or who may experience trauma, but if they're open to that and willing to feel the pain, I think it can also be beneficial. So I think it's a very, like I mentioned before, a personal choice and potentially also guided. So when people, yeah, when they could also talk to someone with a mindfulness teacher potentially. um of course, people before doing a mindfulness course, they fill in a short questionnaire, and some people go through a screening also to see if there is not big issue or triggering for the person. So in that sense, I would say, like, yeah, you would talk to the mindfulness teacher at the beginning, and see if there is also not something that may potentially not be good. I don't know if good is the right word, but yeah,
Cause
that
maybe more harm for that time than
yeah. But if I can say it, I would think that everyone would benefit from it at some point.
if it feels right for
If
them
it
at that
feels like the
moment.
right thing to do completely.
And I mean that if you know yourself or you can train yourself in that as well to ask yourself what you actually want or need. There maybe mindfulness can already
Yeah.
come come in handy to figure that out, and if it's calling you, then you go for it, and otherwise you don't for the time being or not at all. And that's the good thing, we have a free choice to do so if we want to. For anyone who wants to know more about mindfulness, apart from the research that I'm going to
Sure.
share in the show notes, is there maybe a book or something or material they could read up on more apart from
Y-
the book you got me?
yeah, sure. I think that for this though, it may be better if I share with you like some resources that you
Hmm.
can put in the um
Show
in
notes.
the episode show notes. I don't know how to call that. Yeah, in the
Yeah,
show
the show
notes.
notes.
Right. And then yeah, so then people have resources like dif- again, these are my suggestions, things that I find personally useful. So like some apps, some books. This is just based on my own experience and things that yeah, but I'll share them to you later. I think it's easier if
Yeah,
people can just scroll through that and see if they like it or not.
yeah, that will be great.
Yeah,
Then whatever calls the listener, they can go
exactly.
further in or just leave it if it's not
Sure.
for them. So is there anything else that you'd really want the listener to know about mindfulness, your research, your personal
Yeah.
experience on the whole topic?
I think I have been quite what's the word? Very um I think that what I said was quite complete.
Was
um
extensive, yeah.
yeah. There's nothing in particular that comes to my mind at the moment. More than, yeah, if people practice mindfulness, to do it with their hearts open and not only for themselves, I would say. Yeah. And yeah, if people are also curious about my research or what I'm doing, or if they feel that they would like to have a chat with me or something, you can also share, I don't know, my Instagram or my
I'll
email
share
or
that,
something.
yes.
I'm quite open for anyone who has further questions or something. Yeah, so just to put my availability out there.
That's great. Thank you for offering that to everyone listening. I will put that in the show notes for sure. And that's also a beautiful message for everyone to practice mindfulness from, yeah, your heart and also for others, not
Yeah,
just for yourself. Yeah, this was really a great talk and conversation. I really, really enjoyed it. Um, Thank you for following my invitation and being so open about everything and really giving a great, not just overview, but going in depth, because this was super, yeah, interesting for me. And I think also for everyone who's listening. So, yeah, if there are any other questions that you want to ask me or Nasim about certain topics, I'll put the contact data in the show notes so you can contact us via DM or an email. And yeah, if this episode resonated with you, would be really great if you leave a review or you share it with someone who might benefit from it. Follow the podcast. That helps me grow the podcast, get the message to more people. And yeah, I hope this touched you in some way, made you more aware, and I hope you can also practice mindfulness a bit more for yourself. I'm more curious there now, and that by being mindful, you can just let more of yourself shine through. So I'll see you in the next episode.